It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Podcast, available on iHeartRadio every morning and also on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcast from. Well, it's another Monday morning. The weekend is come and gone. It went pretty fast for me. I hope that you got in some sort of relaxation. If you were dealing with property, I hope that went well. Today is the 5th day for September for 2022, which can only mean one thing, of course. Tomorrow will be the first Tuesday of the month, and we know what is going to happen then. Yes, it's RBA talk. The great debate is happening. Will it be a 50 basis points increase or a 75 basis points increase? You never know. It could be 25, but the spending is continuing, so I doubt whether the 25 will come into play. We'll find out soon enough. Coming up this morning, we are going to be talking to Jeremy about his portfolio. He's been a very active, busy bee in the real estate property market since buying his first home in 2019. We mentioned this last week, and there was a bit of media coverage on what Jeremy has been up to. So he will be able to break that all down for us coming up in just a moment on our Monday morning.
It's your Real Estate Podcast for breakfast.
And our road trip in Queensland is continuing this week. It's a virtual road trip, and we have already now gone past Hervey Bay. They're on the Fraser Coast, and we are heading north in search of Rockhampton. So that is coming up a little bit later on this week. If you're celebrating your birthday for the 5th of September, have a great Monday. You share it on the same day as, Raquel Welch. She is still going. She's 81 today. Michael Keaton, is he the greatest Batman of all time? He is turning 70. And Freddie Mercury would have been celebrating his 76th birthday, but it's very hard to sort of imagine him at 76 because when he died back in 1991, he was just 45 years old. And also on this day, back in 1972, the massacre at the Munich Olympics took place. Steven Spielberg made a film about this back in 2005, starring our very own Eric Bana.
It's your weekday real estate breakfast with news, interviews and predictions every morning on the Real Estate Podcast. It's the Main Centre Forecast with PRD, selling smarter every day.
And around Australia we go. First to Sydney this morning. Good morning to you. Expecting a high of 18 degrees and 1 or 2 showers, so you might need the raincoat. Melbourne expecting partly cloudy conditions, but it should be mainly dry for you. 17 is your forecast high. In Brisbane, also partly cloudy with dry conditions and 22. And in Perth today, also some rain, some showers to increase throughout the day, and your high of 18 degrees.
We talk with leading property commentators with analysis, predictions, forecasts and what's trending every morning from 6:30.
Well, you might remember last week I was talking about a Gold Coast family who has bought and sold $18 million worth of property in just over 3 years. And since January of 2019, the family bought 6 homes, sold 3 of them, and have just listed their 4th property for sale in Burleigh Heads. So this is an extraordinary tale, and they have now sold $18 million of property since 2020. They say it's been a bit of a whirlwind of activity, and has it ever when you consider that they bought their first home in January of 2019. So this morning, let's get Jeremy Langston. He's the guy behind the property portfolio, and let's see if we can sort of break all of this down for you this morning. Good morning, Jeremy. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Good morning, Craig. How are you?
Really well. It sounds like you have been incredibly busy. So 2019, you decided to get into the property market. I mean, the tale that you've got almost sounds like somebody that's been in property for about 15 to 20 years, but you've only been going 3 years. So tell us that initial thinking of getting in and how excited you were to get into the property market.
Yeah, certainly. It does sound like one of those stories, but it's a little bit different ours. Yeah, as you mentioned, we bought our first home in January 2019. Went out on my own and started my own business almost a year prior to that. And before that, I never thought I was actually going to own a home, but we were, going quite well in the business and we were able to purchase our first property.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, because you bought your first property and then I think not long after you ended up buying a second property.
Yeah, that's correct, Craig. So it was just under a year and a half later, we purchased our second home in Robina on the Gold Coast. Yeah, then we moved into that property and it was only 3 months after that we moved out of that and bought our third home in Burleigh Heads. So yeah, it all happened quite fast after that.
Okay, so you've got 3 properties and then comes along this property, the Palms. Now, this is a slightly different sort of a property. Tell us a little bit about this. The 4th property that you buy, lovely property.
It was a beautiful property. The third home that we bought and we were living in, it was a really nice home. It had been fully renovated. It was a whole new build. It was a big home in Burleigh Heads, right, close to the beach. Yeah, it was, won Queensland Home of the Year. It was a beautiful property. And then, we went along to the auction and then we purchased that, which was our fourth home.
And after you purchased that home, I mean, firstly, you'd be pinching yourself because you've only got to go back just a short period of time when you bought your first property. Suddenly you're in this great home, which you would probably never have imagined that in this short period of time you would have ended up buying. And then what you do is you end up selling it. And I believe there's a bit of a tennis connection here with Leighton Hewitt buying your property.
Yeah, that's right. So we ended up moving into the Palms and we lived there for probably about 5 weeks until we were homesick for the other area in Burleigh Heads we had just moved from. We loved the home we were living in. It was a beautiful home. We wanted to build that home back in the other area of Burleigh Heads where we had just moved from. So we decided to put it on the market. Within 6 days, it was sold to Leighton and Beck Hewitt.
Yeah, so this is interesting because you've sold it. You've decided to do a sort of a replication, something similar to the Palms home. And since you've sold it, you have bought 2 more properties. One of these properties, you're building a Palms-like home. It's your first build. So just talk to that and we'll talk about the second property. So how's it feel now to be actually building your first home?
Yeah, so it was when we decided to sell the Palms and build, that style of home back in the other area. And being our first build, we were a bit naive about, sort of what it entailed. It's been a very long process of first the design, then the engineering, and then the certification and all the consultants that, get involved with it and all the hurdles you have to jump over. And whilst the builder was quoting up the build, material costs, continued to go up, and timber and concrete and steel. Yeah, so it's been a long process happening since we sold the Palms last September. And here we are a year later and we're just about to start the build. It's been a long process.
Okay, so that's great to hear. And as well as that, you have bought another property which you are doing a bit of a renovation on. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so bought another old style property in Burleigh Heads back in the same area. Yeah, doing a full renovation on that. That in itself has been a big task trying to get trades at the moment. There's a massive shortage of trades on the Gold Coast because there still is, even with the material costs, there still is a lot of activity happening with renovations and new builds still. So yeah, it's been hard to get trades. We're in sort of halfway through the renovation, and that, building a new home is, you don't know what you're going to encounter until you do it yourself. But we're getting through it. We should be about 3 months off that renovation as well. and then we're going to be putting that house on the market. Well, it is on the market currently, I should say. It's going to be sold once all the renovations are complete.
All right. So, Jeremy, everybody that's listening in on the conversation, I'm sure that they're saying to themselves, how much money is he actually making? What's the turnover price, the equity that is growing? So if you feel comfortable, only if you feel comfortable sharing some of those numbers with us, I'm sure the audience would love to hear the sort of markup that you're making and how you're able to finance from one property into another, and so it goes on.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. That's all right. I'm happy to discuss that. I think it was a combination of good timing, but also good investing in good areas. You know, obviously there was a pandemic property boom across Australia. The percentage increases in the areas that I invested in, Robina and Burleigh Heads, the prices skyrocketed. So we purchased the second home in Robina for $860,000, and then 12 months later we sold that for 1.16. The third home in Burleigh Heads we bought for just under 1.5, and we sold that 9 months later for 2.3. And then the Palms, as everybody knows, has been all across the news. We lived there for just under a couple of months. We bought that for 3.7 and sold that for 4.3. So it's been, there's been a bit of capitalising on that boom. Yeah, I think it's been a combination of good investing and good timing.
Jeremy, it's a very timely thing to remind people of just how critical and important a good location is if you are able to finance yourself into a good location with your first property.
Oh, absolutely. They're very important. When I, looked at buying these properties, I also had in the back of my mind, these are investments. And, I looked at the infrastructure going into the area, the amount of new homes that were being built in the area, the amount of money that was being poured into those areas, and it's paid dividends.
All right then, Jeremy. Well, what I'd like you to do is let's keep in touch. Let's touch base in, say, 7 or 8 months' time, because I rather suspect that there will be more of your story to reveal at that point.
Absolutely, Craig. Thanks for your time today. Nice to chat. And, we'll talk in the near future.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.